You are watching Xirtus.
Have you guys seen the Little Buddha with Keanu Reeves as Siddhartha?
Keanu Reeves,
Wow.
aka the lead member of the band Dog Star.
That's
Uh,
pretty. It's a pretty esoteric Canadian reference. It's
Yeah.
important.
Dude,
I
the
think.
one? You talking about Neo right now,
Yeah.
dude?
Let's do this. I don't even know this. Keanu Reeves, Dog Star. I never
You
knew.
didn't know he was in a band called Dog Star? Oh, dude, he was all connected in the scene, dude. He was hanging out with like
Dude, he looks like Tim Pool.
he
That's hilarious.
was
That's
hanging
kind
out
of
with
scary.
Dave Navarro. He does look like Tim Pool. He was hanging out with David
Just there.
Lynch.
In the
Uh,
bit right over the pickups, that's a bad sign, man. You want to like get up on the fretboard. That's gonna be a bad sign.
yeah, no one said he was a good musician, but he hung out with musicians and yeah, he also hung out with this woman who I think, based on some research I did, they ritualistically sacrificed him and Marilyn Manson and some other rock stars. So yeah, Keanu Reeves was kind of connected in the rock scene in LA.
Aw,
Dude,
that makes sense.
if you look at Ted Theodore Logan, you know what I mean, and Bill S. Preston Esquire, I feel like you will find out that these are some of the most, righteous dudes in all space and all time. You know what I mean? If you,
I just think so.
I mean, their message is be excellent to each other. I mean, it's like
Yeah.
Bro,
that wasn't
I just want to say, like, honestly, Bill and Ted like saved and changed my life, and I'm working on
facts.
I'm
Yeah,
gonna
but
build. I'm
is
gonna build San Dimas, and we're gonna save America.
Yes,
here's
dude.
the real question: is Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure the prequel for the Matrix, like the real prequel for the prequel of the Matrix?
Huh? Interesting.
Interesting, huh?
Is
I don't even know what that
Matrix just
means,
the
man.
future? It's
Because they
just
get
the
stuck in the
future.
game, and they
Hey, the dog star never processes, right? It never has our precesses and never moves when we start the procession.
Hmm.
There's the Pleiades and the dog star, which is Sirius, right? Is it stays the same no matter what. It doesn't actually move when all the other planets move.
dude. What's that thing with Google
Are the
Space?
stars and the constellations. Everything else shifts, but it doesn't shift.
What's it called? Google Space or Google? What is it called? Where you can look at it
Google
and it
Sky.
Google Sky, I think it is. So there was a thing where like the entire dog star was blacked out on Google.
Yes, I remember that. Yeah.
There it is, right here. It's like this is if you were to look at it, you got this. I have a version of it with a smiley face, but they definitely didn't want you to know what was going on in the dog star. I mean,
It's the most interesting star to look at because of the changes in shape and colors. And I've always noticed when I first look at Sirius, it'll do some really interesting like red color shifts. And then as I look at more, it kind of settles in. So if you look away from it a while, and you know how kind of when you look at a clock, you might see it like the second hand doesn't move for a second, then it starts moving once you're observing it. I've always Sirius does strange things when you first gaze upon it, and then it kind of settles into a more regular pattern. But you can look at it just with binoculars or a good camera zoom, and there's good videos of this on YouTube of it changing shapes, like in a pattern of colors and shapes, and looks nothing like the other stars.
Have you seen Electric Universe where they show they believe by their theory that we're moving, you know, outwards from the galaxy, and that we're going in a spiral, and it's actually sitting at the center of the spiral. That's why it doesn't move during our procession. That
I'm
we're
not
looking at the
an
polar.
I mean, I imagine these are some kind of either light projectors or like muses, like energy projectors that affect our moods and our dispositions, or like somnolescence, light, sound producing light in a water medium, and that's what we're kind of seeing. And I like the Greek and the Roman interpretation of that. These are actually our muses that are kind of guiding our phases as people, as well as like the ages that we live in and what they represent.
I just saw Holly send a super chat. I tried to show it, but somehow it already. But Holly, thank you for the super chat. And she says, "Cool is greater than drone stuff." I was pretty sure is what that emoji meant. Having said that, I think people are trying to get us to do drone stuff. I don't know how you figured this out. I don't think we mentioned this, but drones are like it's an imminency. It's about to be a thing. So interesting that you guys are bringing that up. We're gonna be doing some drone stuff soon. But let's see. There was Instinct. Then where was that Leo Zagami thing? I had a paper that Leo Zagami wrote. Is that here anymore? I think it's gone. Let's just do the Doherty thing for a second. So Doug and I were looking at this earlier. It's this idea that when a computer gets fast enough that you can interact with it, I think it's like 400 microseconds or something like that, that you, if you push a key and you can type the next key and you can type a word, right? You can continue on with that flow of thought. But this is getting so much more for the metaverse. What it means is like you could put on a helmet and it could create the next step as you step there. And it can create your reality all around you as it's happening, because it can start to model and interact with you in a fast enough time that you can feel like the illusion of reality that it's happening instantaneously. And the main thing that they found that was useful for why corporations felt like studying this was this made you buy their product, right? Because if you could keep using the dang thing, this is one of the reasons the iPhone was so popular. Like you could just not put it down afterwards, right? Because it's beaten the Doherty effect. So we're getting to this point where everyone's used to instantaneous responsiveness, and that means that we're not very patient either. That's also a problem. People aren't willing to wait for a video to download or load, even if it's even if it's a better video. Yeah, and they're not willing to sit through a video either.
Have you heard of the hydrogen theory, where that it's all just one hydrogen atom, everything in the world, and it's just moving at different rates depending on where it is, where you're at, and everything. It's moving so fast, it's faster than our ability to process.
One hydrogen theory. Let me see if I can find anything. That sounds amazing.
Yeah, I don't know exactly what it's called, but it's basically they're saying that there's just one hydrogen atom and it's moving everywhere, and it just slows down at different rates for different materials and stuff like that. So we see everything because we're just moving slower than it can move. It can move everywhere instantaneously, basically.
Man, so that's another question. Do you think we're all instantaneously connected everywhere at once? Or do you think
Andres, are you aware that you're screen sharing a YouTube page right now?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Thanks you for telling me.
We weren't seeing whatever you were seeing. I know the mouse was moving, so I'm like,
I was so excited about all the stuff I was looking at, and now it's all
we
gone.
saw none of that. We saw none of that.
There was this for a while, and I was equating how, it's funny because I feel like for someone listening to a podcast, this would happen anyway, because they wouldn't even, sometimes I don't even talk about it.
The page just on before this one is interesting because that reminds me a lot of like we were talking about the stars, or when you look at the planets and how they kind of change shapes and stuff like that. The hydrogen.
I'll find it.
Well, and I wonder how much of that is like you're lining your eyes up with a source of light that you wouldn't otherwise catch, and it's like you're engaging with that band of light, and like as the light's coming towards you, you're like seeing more of it. I don't know, but it's certainly I've seen similar things looking at the star, like a change in color, almost to the point where you're like, is that like a plane or something? Like, why did it just change from orange to blue?
Fluctuations in the wave of what light looks like. It's burning off different elements, right?
But yeah, if the question is, are we all interacting with all matter and energy and each other all the time? I think it's pretty obvious. I mean, you talk about things that you see evidence of in nature, when you see what do you call them? The mushroom colonies, mycelium, mycelium colonies and stuff like that, and how they interact with the tree roots and everything. And of course, we're exchanging carbon dioxide and oxygen with trees and all that, and the melanin in our body is also producing oxygen, and then there's a finite amount of oxygen in our atmosphere. So it seems pretty evident that everything is deeply tied to everything else, and
we're all each other.
Everything that you guys were talking about in the first hour it was so interesting, because the Aleister Crowley thing, like summoning the demon, and it really tied in with me with the idea of people who believe the volcanoes are just mining waste piles, because if reality is perception, and we can all influence each other to perceive things that are wildly out of that don't, the rubber doesn't hit the road, where we don't actually see, we can't do anything with that information. If we're not summoning the demon just by allowing all ideas to kind of be equal with each other, even if this guy's seen a volcano erupt and other people say that there are no volcanoes, if we allow all these ideas to hold equal weight with each other, are we not summoning the demon by disconnecting ourselves with the evidence of nature and what actually is going on?
Yeah, I think that technology is the way that people are used to now. It used to be that you like explain something like, well, this thing is the grinder. It eats the pencil, and you get a sharp tooth pencil that you can, I've seriously, like, people used to explain this to kids, and now kids are like, oh, it's like a microchip and it does a thing. That's the natural way to think. It's because the mechanical nature is so much more practical and useful for this person that's never been in outside organic nature before. I mean,
this whole kind of thinking, this explorative thinking, is an artifact of affluent society. Because if you're a farmer and you think that volcanoes don't exist, you think that whatever, wheat doesn't exist or rain doesn't make crops grow, you know what I mean? There's this kind of thinking, what would be an actual demon if there was like one guy in your farming community who's like, the wheat is actually an alien or whatever, you know, like you'd have to excommunicate. If ever anyone started entertaining those ideas, you wouldn't be able to farm anymore. You wouldn't have sustenance. So,
Dude, do you guys remember Idiocracy, where they can't figure out how to make plants grow, and they're like electrolytes? Exactly, dude. Exactly. These people are like, clouds don't exist. You're like, stupid. Look up. Like,
I think the problem is like so many people. So this is my theory on this, right? So there's like a level of, and I got this by accident from Jerry Seinfeld's speech at the commercial, whatever it was, where he won like the award for the best commercials. And he says, you know, I love commercials because I don't care when the product gets here, I'll get another commercial and I'll be hopeful for that product. When the product gets here, I'm happy, like from when I order that product on the phone and see the commercial up until it arrives. And when it arrives, it lets me down. But then I have a new commercial and then I keep dreaming about the next thing. So the product never has to match the commercial. The commercial is the most brilliant part because it's the magic, right? You know, I think that's a huge thing for people. So we're living in this perpetual, create a dream, and that can be valuable, but it also destroys people because they become cynics. A lot of people say, okay, well, I'm never going to buy something again. That hovercraft from Mad Magazine was a ripoff, you know?
So I think this is the next step in understanding, is that these things that are pushing us forward and progressing us are always related to these elite.
Oh, they cut him because it was so deep. Say it again, Giant.
They seem to be connected to
Giant,
demons
say it again.
Doing these pushing. You know what I mean?
Say it again. They cut you off.
What I was saying is that these entities that we consider demons and stuff like that are interacting with what we call the elites and everything, right? Am I still going?
Yeah.
Okay, so what they're doing is their purpose. If you look at the Hindu epics and stuff like that, they're the Nagas and everything, and their purpose is, if you read all the different stuff that they're talking about, their purpose is to push forward humanity by putting pressure on us, causing strife and wars and stuff like that, so that we progress forward to the technological advancement that will eventually use either to free ourselves or enslave ourselves, right? It'll either get a grip of us if we don't take control of it, or it'll enslave us, because the ones that are behind pushing the progress are the ones that actually don't, they live in this world in a different way. They're a part of the duality that is about domination and negativity and all this stuff, and they're warlike. So if we don't get to a point where we realize what they're doing and take hold of what they're building, right, what they're pushing us forward through, because humans, good humans and good in this world, that part of the duality just wants to seek balance, wants to be fair. You know what I mean? We just want to harmonize. We want to have fun. And we would stay in small tribes. We wouldn't have progressed farther than hunter and gatherer. Their job is to push us forward so that they can push this technology thing. And what it's doing is that they're getting to a point where they can free more of the demonic spirits. But we have to get to the point, and the Buddhists are trying to free these sentient beings that are locked inside of this underworld or
a lot of Buddhist programmers, just saying.
Yeah, so we're trying to what I believe is the point, the mission of humanity, and what we're supposed to be doing is we have to figure out how to unlock these things and release them from the lostness that they have become, from their demonic energies and stuff like that. And they want to release it and they will not stop doing what they're doing because they just have this programming in them to release themselves, and then they'll wreak havoc. And so what keeps on happening is in these resets is that they keep on wreaking havoc to the point that God has to reset things because we didn't figure out that we had to fix them. You see what I'm saying? We had to make them
it's that veil. So again,
they're broken, but they're pushers.
Well, yeah. So you think again with this Jerry? No. I was just gonna say, like Jerry Seinfeld. You get this product. People actually are thinking it's a veil. So you're believing that you live in a world with Santa Claus and with flying ships you can buy from magazines, and where the vacuum is going to work and everything like that. And when that veil's lifted, there's a huge amount of the population which is primed because they've lifted the veil. They know that it's a lie, but they stay there. And that's where so many people are like, well, then the volcano is not what it's cracked up to be. And Australia, you know what? It's not what I thought it was. So it just might as well not exist. And Paris, you know, I went to Paris. It did not look like it did in the magazine. So I don't think I was really in Paris because the magazine was real, but the place, that must have been some cacophony. You know, I think that most people deny reality because they're so used to denying the veil, which has been lying to them all their lives. They're not ready to start picking up on like these other the impacts of their lives that are true.
Yeah.
Well, that requires responsibility. That requires attention and a willingness to engage with reality. And it's far easier to just look forward to something great that might happen because they told you to.